He is waiting for you, ever silent. Behind the wall he sleeps. He waits in shadow for the end of days, for the call that will end the earth. May the oceans dry, may the sun extinguish itself. Praise his coming. Enjoy death's sweet embrace, as he waits behind the wall, ever waiting for the call, the beat of drums, your heart, that never-ending beat. He awaits the song that will corrupt the heart. When it has been sung, you will know, for he will appear, his seventh mouth still open, and hum the call that will end the world. He is coming, expect him. I sing. But I cannot sing the song that ends it all, but I await the one who can, for he will tell me secrets. He will tell me of Raelogh, and why he is no more. Before I go, I shall know the tale of Raelogh. Why, hello there. Do you know who I am? Of course you do. Well, subconsciously, you do. You just chose to deny it. But you know who I am. In fact, you're aware of me right now. You just choose to pretend I'm not there. Ignorance is bliss, right? I'm the shadow in the room that appears darker than the others. It's not your imagination. I'm the figure you see out of the corner of your eye. It's never really there. Just turn around. I'm the eyes behind that feeling you get of constantly being watched. I never stop watching you. I'm the presence you feel when you're completely alone. You're never alone. I'm the image that you never notice in the back of your photographs. I'm standing right behind you. I'm the one who is always just out of your direct line of sight. Consider yourself lucky, because every time you see me, I get a little closer. I try to slowly fall asleep, but my sight continued to be focused on my closet door. I looked and looked as if something in the wood or the knob was going to change its shape. I am what you could call an insomniac, but never this bad. It felt like hours passed by. However, my mind was telling me to continue staring. Whenever I was about to close my eyelids, I would hear a slight rattle followed by a mumble. I could hardly make out the words. But every single time it became a little clearer, as if the mumbling were closer and closer to me. Then suddenly I felt a breeze upon my face. However, my window was shut. Anyway, this breeze felt nothing like a cold wind. It was warm, and even had an odor to it. I was sitting upright at this point, wondering what was going on. Suddenly I heard it. Open it. But before I knew it, I was out of my bed, almost as if my body functioned without my brain. I walked to the door, placed my hand on the knob, and it was freezing cold. I hesitated only to have the warm air pressed against my ear again. Open it! The voice sounded more angry than before. One final time it yelled, Open it! Out of a reflex, I pulled the door open quickly. I didn't know what to expect to find, but of course there was nothing. Nothing out of place in my closet. I went back to my bed and finally fell asleep. The next morning I woke late, wondering why my roommate didn't wake me up as he promised. I walked into his room to complain, and I still can't stomach saying it. He was lying on the bed. However, his face was disfigured. His arm was missing. Shit. His chest was cut open. I fell to the floor in disgust. On the brink of passing out, I grabbed the cell phone and called 911. They arrived shortly, brought me in and asked me the usual questions. The last one was the oddest, however, and I didn't fully understand. Before this horrific accident occurred, my roommate wrote on his bathroom wall, "I always win. You didn't open the door to my domain, to my heart. Now I'll open the domain to yours." They say that monsters come only at night, that light will drive them away. But not all creatures follow this rule. Safety, not certainty during the day. He hides on the fringe of your vision, brief glimpses of the distorted. He slithers and writhes behind your ears, reaching for you, limbs contorted. Before you know it, your children are taken, and now it comes down to you. His breath is oppressive, his presence acidic. He feels pity is undue. Suddenly, trapped in his grasp so tight, you struggle to break yourself free. He laughs and gurgles, and he screeches with glee. He turns your head to see. Your children are crying though their eyes are removed. They collapse, still and silent. His arms and legs bend, pulling you closer. The man's eyes dark and violent. He strikes and cuts your skin, flays open. Your soul, too weak to resist. This should not have happened if only you'd listened. Never go into his forest. Among the ashes, burned in despair, exasperate the crimson angels, and be lifted into dead air. These were the words that changed my life, cursed me, damned me. Now before I get started, let me tell you, yes, I know what I did wasn't wise, and by the time you've heard this, I'll be gone. For I can't take this any longer. This is not what I wish to be remembered by. But there's nothing left for me aside from this. It all began on a beautiful, warm night. A Thursday, I recall. All subsequently in a graveyard. The sun came, casting warm shadows on the headstones. I was with my friends, laughing at the bitter quotes on the graves. You know, something like, "In loving memory of wife, mother, and sister." We were just being ignorant, finding their family's losses humorous. "Hey!" one of my friends chuckled. "Check this one out!" I couldn't quite see him because he had wandered off, but I followed the sound of his voice to the crumbling, ancient-looking mausoleum. Very cliché, I know, but barely weathered on that door. That goddamn door. Lie the quote that would hold my fate. My friend pointed at it and scoffed. He read it like some stupid old ghost story, you know, that you read when you're a kid. "Among the ashes, buried in despair, exasperate the crimson angels, and be lifted through dead air." After that he paused. It left an eerie feeling, like fog, leaving us in a dense silence. But he laughed it off. "What is that supposed to mean?" I asked. It sent a cold shiver down my spine, but I tried to conceal my discomfort. More of my friends walked over to see what all the laughing was about. I was the only one without a twisted smirk on my face. "Well, someone has to go in there," I heard one of them say. And before I knew what was happening, a flashlight was shoved in my face. It took me a moment to process what was happening, but when I closed my eyes, which was a reaction to the blunt shove, I found myself on a cold, damp floor. When I opened my eyes, all I saw was darkness. A rush of panic washed over me as I fumbled to find my flashlight, somewhere on the ground. As soon as I find it, I grasped onto it like my very life depended on that cheap piece of crap. I pressed the button. A dull yellow light flooded the room. I didn't think it was possible, but even with the comfort of light, the fear within me didn't lessen. In fact, it had only gotten worse. I paid no mind to it. I paid no mind to my so-called friends who were laughing at my frantic behavior, or at least what they could hear beyond the massive stone door that they had closed behind me. Instead, my attention focused on what was before me. Nothing. Just dark. A hallway that seemed to go on forever. But no matter my fright, something told me to go on, like an ominous force pulling me in. I walked into that endless hallway. Oh, how I wish I wouldn't have, but I did. Suddenly, my flashlight began to flicker. I kept walking. It seemed like an eternity of trudging on, but I just kept walking. And then, without warning, my flashlight gave out. There I was, abandoned in the darkness. Nothing was in sight, and all sound was absent. I fell on my knees, where I stayed for who knows how long. Then I heard the faintest noise in the distance. I couldn't quite make out what it was, so I began to crawl towards the source. And the further I crawled, the clearer the noise became. That was when I discovered the noise with a woman's cries. Not for help. Not cries of terror, but mind-numbing sorrow. She sobbed hysterically, her voice shaking with grief. This went on for hours. The blood-curdling cries made my hair stand on end, and my skin to grow cold. She sounded so broken. I felt so sorry. I began to crawl again, to try and find this tortured soul to comfort. I couldn't take this much longer, but I didn't get too far. I slipped. I tried to crawl again, but once again my hand slipped out from under me, leaving me on the cold, sleek floor to suffer through more of the everlasting sobs. It was then I began to cry, and shiver as well. Her dread seemed to be contagious, but still, her deafening cries came over mine. It was at this point that nothing mattered to me anymore. Death seemed like my only salvation. But before I could consider that any longer, I saw a light. Not a peaceful-looking light, but it looked as if it were here to comfort me. I drew in a shaking breath and crawled my way to the dim beam. The light grew as I closed in on it. Without second-guessing to where this would take me, I pulled myself through the opening. The light was a way out. I finally was out of that hell. I burst out of the ground like a stereotypical zombie movie and rolled over onto the dew-laced grass. Still weeping, still shaking, I lied there. Blood trickling from my ears, and my knees pulled to my chest, recovering from the torture. The sun began to rise, and I began to calm down. I dragged myself off the ground and ran as fast as I ever have. Small sobs escaping from between my breath, I flung myself into my car. My friends were gone. I never found out where they went, but I didn't care. I just wanted to start the engine and get the hell out of there. I took another moment to breathe. I rested my hand on the steering wheel and closed my eyes. It was at that sickening moment when I heard the faintest noise. My eyes shot open. My heart sank a mile. The noise was that woman's cries. And ever since then, I've not been able to escape that horrid lamenting. Sometimes it goes on for days, and sometimes, on a very rare occasion, it will stop for a brief moment. I'll catch my breath. Then agony begins once more. I can't take this any longer. This is my goodbye. Among the ashes, buried in despair, exasperate the crimson angels, and be lifted into dead air. She shall cry no more, and nor shall I.